Hey, hey, hey. Cool. So, sorry about that little pause there. Welcome, everybody. My name is Cedric Clyburn. I'm a senior developer advocate here at Red Hat, and I'm very happy that you're here today. Feel free to let me know where you're calling in from today. I'm in New York City in the United States, but I know we probably have a huge community of developers from all around the world. So, feel free to let me know in chat. I see Ajit, you're from San Jose, California. Feel free to let me know where you're calling in. And I've got a very fun and exciting session, but also a workshop for you today on how to make large language model fine tuning accessible with an open source project that is called InstructLab. So you might have heard about it before, and it's very interesting because as a developer myself, fine tuning was kind of always something that was not in my domain, right? This was something more that data scientists did, that ML engineers did. But now more and more so, we've kind of seen this position of an AI engineer be more popular, right? Someone who can focus on LLMs, focus on prompt engineering, focus on RAG, agentic, and now fine tuning and kind of combining some of those different practices all baked together into a single model, and you're going to have the chance to do this in today's session. I see everyone here in the chat. Hey guys from London, from Seattle, Netherlands, Ohio, Illinois, Germany, California. This is awesome to see everybody here. And I'll also mention, yes, this is a hands-on workshop. So we're going to split the time between just some concepts here on how fine-tuning works and synthetic data generation, which is a very hot topic right now. And then for the other half of the session, for the other 15 minutes, I'm going to set you loose. We've got some Red Hat Enterprise Linux virtual machines that you're going to be able to use for free. And you're going to be able to try out InstructLab and fine-tune a model and actually integrate it into an application. This is all interactive, and let's go ahead and get started. So, hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Cedric. I work at Red Hat. I love open source software. I come from the world of Kubernetes and containers. But I also help break down those topics as well as AI on the IBM Technology channel. So feel free to check out the video and actually also check out one of my favorite GitHub open source repositories, which is roadmap.sh, which this video can be found in. And I love this because it's a great way to learn about all of the different concepts for AI and for AI engineering, token, vector databases, open versus closed models. And you can actually find the video that I did with IBM here as well. So if you're looking to expand your skills, just one of my favorite open source projects there. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase here because we have just a limited amount of time. What we see at Red Hat dealing with a lot of Fortune 500 customers and organizations in general that are adopting AI is that there are several challenges in this kind of early state of LLMs and generative AI. Now, we've also been working with predictive AI for a long time, and so we've learned some things, but most notably, we're going to be diving into the complexity to actually take a large language model that's very general purpose and can do a lot of things and actually customize it with your unique data, right? Whether this is data about you, your organization, your specific use case that you want to use AI with, I think it's important to realize that the data that's helpful for you in doing your everyday job is likely going to be helpful for a model too. Let's say for the example today, it's an insurance agent who wants to use some kind of chatbot AI to help do their job. Well, if that model doesn't have any understanding of that particular domain, right, it's not going to be as effective in helping in terms of processing, efficiency, cost, latency, all of these different factors. And at the end, being able to conversate about that specific topic. Now, in addition, there's cost. For example, every time you inference a model, if you're having to provide a lot of prompt engineering or increase your token size, that can be a little bit prohibitive when you scale things up to production, as well as flexibility. Say you're using an LLM API that might be hosted somewhere in the cloud. Well, if you have private or personally identifying data, it's not always a good idea to be able to send that right to a third-party cloud. So these are some of the things that we're tackling with being able to customize and run your own AI models that we do with the InstructLab project that you're going to see today. So let's go ahead and talk about why we have a need to customize models. Now, I think this is really going to blow up this year because LLMs have always kind of been this general purpose utility, right? It knows a lot about different subjects, But unfortunately, less than 1% of enterprise data is represented in the traditional foundation models that you use probably every day as a developer or engineer or essentially anybody now, right? And so what we want to be able to do is align these models and customize them to unique data sets that might not already exist, data that might not already be out there. And so just like as a developer, you would start with, say, for example, Spring Boot as a solid foundation, right? You need to start from a foundation and then build upon that, align it for a specific use case for your application, and be able to deploy it wherever you want, right? Not be restricted to a single cloud vendor, which is what we do at Red Hat, right? Give you the option to run Linux everywhere, right? We're also doing it with this open source project, InstructLab, for AI models. And why is this important? Well, because right now, if you were to go out and you're tasked with building out a specific model for your application, well, what's going to happen is you might not have a data set out there that can help you when you're doing model training, right? Prompt engineering and RAG will only be able to get you so far. And it's kind of a solution that could actually be baked into a model every time you inference it, right? To not have to provide the context of, hey, you are a helpful agent. This is what you know about. This is some additional information. Be able to provide that intuition into a model is what's known as fine tuning. And to do that, you need to have enough data to build an effective model. And you might have been hearing in the news recently, there's this kind of data shortage of the fact that we've trained models on all of the internet and we're running out of data. And so the new trend right now is called synthetic data generation. And that means doing all the processes of a data engineer, a data scientist, ML engineer, such as data collection, right? Pulling from different sources online or from, say, sensors or IoT, and doing data cleansing and transformation and feature engineering, traditional things you would do with Python libraries. But actually, what I'll show you today is the automation of all of these processes. Um, I see two quick questions that I'll answer. The video is fine tuning versus RAG, which I highly recommend you check out. And notion of tokens is, let's say every time you're talking to an AI model, those words are broken up into units that the model can actually understand, which are known as tokens. Now, the way that, coming back to data generation and curation to train a model, the way that we're proposing a more accessible way to do this, if you're not a data scientist or ML engineer, if you're just the average you and me, well, we provide an open source project at Red Hat here called InstructLab. And I'll tell you why it's important. Because let's say in a traditional sense, if you want to build your own foundation model, which very few people do, well, IBM is one of those people. Check out the Granite models. Quick shout out there. What you do is take a large amount of text into tokens. So this could be 12 trillion tokens from Common Crawl, which is a huge repository online. And you do pre-training, a large amount of computation. It might take months and thousands or millions of dollars to have a base model. And after that, you fine tune it. We either with human feedback. So we're kind of inputting how we want it to act and have intuition with human feedback or supervised fine tuning, different ways of fine tuning, which we'll look at with different instruction data sets. But as I mentioned before, if you're building a specific app, a specific use case, you might not have a data set ready, or it might take too long to finally have a chat model to integrate into your application. What we're looking at today is what's known as alignment tuning. So I'll turn on the laser pointer here, which is being able to take your source documents, so Confluence, PDFs, best practices, and actually provide that to a large language model in order to teach a student. So the same way that you and me would be quizzed on different subjects, we do that to the model in an automated way, leveraging an LLM, which can provide annotation capabilities almost as good or better than the average human. So that's because these models are just so powerful nowadays. I love seeing what's new in the state of open source, especially for those models, and also making sure to evaluate that, but in this automated fashion, so that at the end of the day, I could ask a question and the student LLM that we've trained for a specific domain can answer it from its knowledge. And this might be kind of what's known as grounding, or might remind you of grounding, which has been popular this year in the form of retrieval augmented generation, where let's say I ask the question in a prompt. Well, we have a retrieval model, which can actually go to a knowledge base repository with our question, find something that's relevant, and be able to pull that. Or say, for example, be able to do an action with agentic behavior. And so this is kind of what's known as RAG for documentation, or different source data, or agentic behavior. And what's great is that you can combine a form of fine tuning your model to be an expert in a field with the ability of RAG or agentic behavior. And so that's what's unique about InstructLab and fine tuning in general, is that, hey, you take your enterprise data, you choose the right model, and you fine tune it without the complexity of traditional fine tuning. And you can complement traditional RAG, so pull from dynamic data sources while also having a model that understands the different nuances about what you do. So let's go ahead and see this in action. As I said before, I've got some awesome workshop environments for you guys to try out InstructLab. So this is that open source project that IBM and Red Hat actually contribute to. And it's a simple command line interface to use in the terminal to do this fine tuning without having data science expertise. So that means that we provide a folder structure to organize the data that you want to add to a model. And we provide a generation process, a workflow to do all the automation of, hey, let's clean this data, let's make it in a readable format. And then we also enable the fine tuning and a multi-phase process so that the model can keep what it knows and also add all of that new information on top. So let's go ahead and see that with the workshop here. We're about 12 minutes in, and we're going to have the rest of the time and a few hours afterwards if you want to play around with InstructLab in order to get this working. And so I'll give you the workshop information here so that you can try it out. And I'm also going to walk through it with you in case you just want to see it in action. So the first link that we have here is the Team One, Cash Me If You Can, one of my favorite movies, but a little bit of a pun on it. And the link is in chat, as you can see. It's a red.ht slash IBM dash workshop dash one. And I'll show you what this looks like here in just a second. But this is going to bring you to a workshop page where you can use whatever email address that's just going to save your progress and use the password InstructLab to get started and get access to that machine. And so I'll show you that here in a second, but I'm just going to double check and see how many seats we have, because I have multiple different rooms that you could use. So we'll just wait here a second, and I'll actually show you how this looks as well. So I'll hop over here, provide my email, and InstructLab is the password. And in the meantime, as I show you how this looks, this is the workshop interface here. In the meantime, I'm going to just answer some questions and let folks get situated. And I'll go back here and kind of provide the information to get situated on the workshop. So just 2 seconds here. So in the meantime, feel free to ask some questions on fine tuning or this project, and we'll kind of go through this workshop together. I'm just waiting for, let's see, duplicate. Waiting for my browser to start working again. All right, cool. Awesome. So yes, feel free to join there. And once we run out of seats there, I see we've already got 30 people in the workshop. Then I will switch to the next one. So let's feel free to hop in. All right, so I'm going to go through the chat here real quick. You guys ask wonderful questions. I'm going to start from the top. Mario, wonderful answer to the token question. Appreciate you there. Can InstructLab connect to Milvus to add additional content to the fine-tuning process? So that's a great question. When we do the data curation, before we synthetically generate much more data, the way that it's set up right now is the most traditional open source way, a Git repository. So that's how we model the data, and that's how you kick off the training process, is by connecting to this Git repository, so that, hey, let's say we have other people in our team, they can understand where we get the data from and the explainability behind how the model acts, why it acts. If you want to pull in data from different sources, essentially you could represent it. You'd have to represent it through the repository, whether if it's public or private Git. And then I think Milvus would be more for, let's say, in a RAG example afterwards, if you want to pull that data in inference time. But for now, for the training time, we just pull from Git. But if you want to do some type of connection to your database, you could. I hope that answers your question. The base models that InstructLab supports, that we're going to see today here in the workshop, it's actually model agnostic. So we did a lot of research, and I'll show you that at InstructLab.ai with the MIT Watson team. And you can check this out at InstructLab.ai and see the paper here, where we actually improved the MMLU and benchmark scores of both Llama and Mistral by using this technique. So there was a considerable improvement in the performance of these models by using InstructLab, which you could do on various types of model architectures. Llama and Mistral are just two of them. Of course, Granite and other model types are also possible. So I'll answer two more questions, and then we'll hop through and we'll do this workshop. Let me double check and see how many seats we've registered, and we'll go from there. Awesome, about 50 there. Okay, I'll check out another question. All right. Well, let's pause there for now for the questions, and go ahead and hop into the workshop. So here on the left-hand side, I should have explained this before, is the table of contents for all the different concepts and commands that you'll learn for using this CLI. As I mentioned, it's this open source project that you can actually check out here on GitHub. So it's just InstructLab, github.com/InstructLab in order to check it out. And so you can actually try out this CLI on your own machine, whether you have Apple Metal or GPU, Linux, Mac, Windows, whatever you're using, you can do this model fine tuning from your local machine. But I'll hop back here and let's actually, well, I guess not, we're not going to do that. We're going to kick it off now. And so you've got two terminals here. You're going to see why here in a little bit. And you also have a container running in the background. So this container is the application that we're going to be adding Gen AI capabilities to. What happens right now is that at this insurance organization, our agents are dealing with a lot of different claims, new claims, and a backlog. And so the idea from the product manager is to, hey, let's get some type of chatbot in here so they can do their job better. And so you see that they're going to have the capability here from the front end team to connect to a model running somewhere, right, on our local machine or say in the cloud, to help them approve or deny claims, ask questions about the source documentation, etc. Right? And this is one of the biggest use cases of AI is, hey, I want to add a chatbot. This chatbot will bring a lot of value because it can process and deal with this overwhelming amount of context and information that our employees have to deal with every day. And I think personally, that's the value of AI, is to help make our lives just, hopefully a little bit better. So that's kind of the situation that we're going to be working with. We're going to fine tune a model that knows our organization and it knows our data that a traditional large language model simply wouldn't know about. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what we'll do today. I'll give you the introduction. We're talking about InstructLab, which is for us part of RHEL AI, which is kind of the enterprise way to fine tune these LLMs and to serve them for applications. But it is a fully open source project, and it comes from that research paper that we just talked about. Now, I'm sure at this point, you know what an LLM is. We don't have to harp about that, but you can do a lot of tasks my favorite is working with large amounts of data. And all of this text here, of course, has been generated by an LLM. And so it's a simple example of what it can do. For our specific use case, it'll be able to work through the information about these claims submitted from email from our customers and be able to make and assist with decisions on our behalf. So as I talked about in the presentation, large language models are trained from large amounts of information, typically generic information from the internet, and they don't have any idea about your specific use case. And with InstructLab here, we provide a process to train and tune a model with your unique data. And this is a really new and innovative concept. And that's why I love talking about it. And that's why I'm happy that you're here as well. We're talking also about the command line interface that you'll be using here in the terminal. So you'll see that etc os release, let's see. Let me see. You'll see that Red Hat release. Okay. I'm just trying to show you that it's a RHEL 9 machine. But you can check that out later. What I've already done on this system for all of you guys is set up the iLab command line. So what you'll need to do is don't worry about any of these requirements. We already handled that for you. But you'll need to set up a virtual environment for Python. And so the way to do this is I've already ran this command, but you'll source a virtual environment and activate it. And now you've got this little venv thing right here to be able to run the command iLab to do the model fine tuning. So just like that, we've got everything installed on this top terminal. We can use InstructLab. So let's go ahead and use InstructLab. So I'll go ahead and clear that, and we'll set up a new working environment for our model. So similar to how you would set up a repository and you would add your code to that, we're going to do the same for InstructLab. So we're going to point to taxonomy, and that's where we're going to store our data. And we're also going to clone it. So a default skeleton structure of how to model the behavior. We're also going to point to a local LLM that we're going to run and help us to generate that data. And it seems like we're using this NVIDIA L4 to speed up training. So I'll go ahead and say, yes, that training profile is correct. And so just like that, we're good to go. Now, I'm also going to download a model that we'll be able to chat with, and we'll also be able to use to generate data. So we're going to use Granite, which is a open source large language model that comes from our friends here at IBM. Granite is unique because they share the training data and ethical practices on that training data, which is very important so that you're not impeding on copyright. And there's been a numerous amount of lawsuits that come from, hey, where is AI getting its source information from? So Granite is a little bit different in that regard, and I like it. Does a great job. So we're going to wait for this model to download. And in the meantime, I'm going to answer some questions here real quick in the chat while we're doing this. So let me hop back over, double check that. Let's see. Okay, cool. Let's see. Okay, so we've got a new question from Ajit as we're going through the workshop. Does InstructLab support building models from scratch? So great question. I'll show you this in the presentation of kind of how it works in general for foundation models. Is that one of the big players, right, will do the pre-training on tons and tons of GPUs in order to get to a base model that we can then fine tune. But as far as building models from scratch, it's more so just the fine tuning process with InstructLab of taking a model that exists already, whether it's Granite or Llama or Mistral, and then customizing it. So not necessarily the pre-training, just the fine tuning phase is what InstructLab does. But great question. So looks like we're still waiting on this bad boy. Another question. So, okay, Mario, this is and thanks guys for answering the questions about the workshop pass. And if we can actually add the workshop link one more time to the chat, that would be great, just in case folks are hopping in late and they want to join in on the workshop. Any chance with a paragraph to let us know if both IBM AI and Red Hat can be leveraged by SMBs and startups that are very cost sensitive? That's a great point. And as this model is still downloading, I'll kind of mention here that one of the big challenges in adopting AI, and two of them is actually cost and vendor lock-in, right? And we've seen this at the same time with hybrid cloud in terms of, hey, I want to deploy my application and use cloud computing, but I don't want to be stuck into a single vendor. What happens if they change their egress fees or different types of cost? Well, then I'm stuck paying it. I think that flexibility is so important with AI models and running them, and being able to either use your own compute, run it on device, or run it somewhere where you could go back and forth. And at the same time, the reason that we use InstructLab is to not have to use, say, a 1 trillion parameter model, right? That's too much for the job. It's too complex. It's too expensive. You can actually just use, for example, as we'll do today, an 8 billion parameter model, and actually be able to fine tune it to be an expert and actually reach the same benchmarks as a Chat GPT or a Claude or a Gemini, but be much, much smaller and much more efficient. And that's kind of the goal of InstructLab, is to do that in a unique way from the command line. And wow, okay, I should have downloaded these models before. What I'm going to do is kind of skip to a part at the bottom, and I'll show you what happens. Is that we've downloaded models, and we'll serve the model, as we'll do here in a second. And when we chat with the model initially, it's going to be like any LLM that you've used before. It'll be very generic, very general purpose. And when we ask a question, what is OpenShift? Well, it'll be able to answer, hey, it's a container orchestration platform on Kubernetes, right? Any LLM could do that. But what we want to do is be able to integrate a model into our insurance application, as I said before, that knows our company, it knows our data, it knows our policies. And so the way we do that, to be able to answer a question. For example, you can see here Marty McFly has damaged his car. Well, we want to be able to ask how much a flux capacitor costs and be able to understand the price that we train the model with, right? And so what we do with InstructLab, is we kind of divide this up into different folder structures. So, for example, if we want to be able to add skills for new capabilities of summarizing earnings, right? We provide examples on how to do that, and then call a data generator, which is the local large language model, to produce a large amount of tokens on synthetic email data, right? And so this is also important for, say, for example, private or personal identifiable information, to be able to do this in a synthetic way. And then we train it back into the model. So I'll come back here and I'll actually show you what this looks like as the top terminal is working. We've got a taxonomy that we initialized here, and we add a new folder to it, and we copy in this YAML. And so the YAML, I'll actually show you the first 10 lines is just plain text information about our policies, about our car here that we're going to have in our organization as an option. And I'll show you the whole file is we can kind of provide this just as text, as markdown, to be able to train into a model. So I'll show you, oh, I'm not in the virtual environment. I would show you the validation of that file. And what we would do is generate that data using a locally served model, using GPU acceleration. And at the end of the day, we would have JSON-L files, which is a pretty standard way to gather that source data and train it back into a model. And we would serve it. So if you have time after today or later on, I'll keep these workshop environments running, and you actually be able to see the difference before and after of using a model that's been fine-tuned for the specific use case. And you'll be able to answer, get a correct answer from your question. and that is the workshop. So feel free to try this out later. It's a great and really unique experience. I know you're going to learn a lot, but unfortunately, it is the half of the hour here that I've been allotted, and I want to be respectful. So I want to say a huge thank you and answer any last questions, and kind of just celebrate the day and appreciate you for joining. I hope there's been a lot of learning in this session and many others. And my name is Cedric Clyburn. I appreciate your time. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you have any questions, or if you're interested in the slides and how this technology works, feel free to check out the link here. But I'll answer just some last questions. The lab will be accessible over the next few hours. So actually, I set up 3 of them. Funny enough, the password is InstructLab. Feel free to screenshot this if you would like to keep that information. If you, for Ramakanta, if you want to train a model on product documentation and services, which is a great use case. As far as designing the taxonomy, if you go to github.com/InstructLab and go to the taxonomy repository or docs.instructlab.com, you can learn how to do just that. Design the taxonomy, put your painting and final touches on it, and then generate that data to train a model. So I recommend going to those 2 sources. And as far as the workshop goes, hope you try it out. Again, my name is Cedric. It was a pleasure to chat with you guys here today. Enjoy the rest of your time, and thank you again for coming. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.